Lisa Dolan, what a pleasure. We haven't had too much of a chance to get to know each other over the last few months since we started working together. So some of this is going to be live for us, which we're excited about. But I mean, former operator, finance background, predictive analytics, former founder, and now managing director here at Link Ventures. So you've had a wealth of experience across finance, insurance, AI. And what I would love to hear from you today is like, what is everybody getting wrong about AI adoption into the enterprise? Are we all hype, or are you actually seeing companies successfully sell to these larger businesses?
Well, yes, I'd love to work more with you, clearly. And I think that off the bat, no, it's not all hype. I believe that we're seeing companies focus on the low-hanging fruit. So in insurance, Lemonade, as an example, has a much more efficient processing claim department, all driven by AI. Mm-hmm. And so insurance, finance are the low-hanging fruit. And then where we're seeing applications is in customer service, right? Mm-hmm. So Klarna, as you know, took out their entire customer service team. And insurance, there's the middle management that all can be automated. So claims processing, and then your company could be offering the same product to an insurance company, to a finance company, to a healthcare company that all has that middle management layer that could be automated. And so I see clear adoption now, given a certain function that is easily transformed today. We've invested in healthcare.com, which you guys are going to be working with.
What a domain name. Oh my gosh. Like, great company also, but man, they nailed that domain.
Yes. The founders are really good at buying domain names. Healthcare.gov clearly is, we get some traffic from healthcare.gov. So they're a platform for short-term medical and Medicare insurance. Very, very sort of old fogey business that can be automated by AI, having agents who are on their phone around the country selling insurance. And so that's where we're seeing the low-hanging fruit is in the sales, marketing, customer service. So it's not all hype, 1,000%.
Let's talk agents, because you brought it up. So we're seeing, outbound BDR agents, we're seeing inbound customer service agents, we're seeing processing agents. Like, what have you seen that's been most effective to adding directly to the customer's bottom line from an AI agent perspective?
I'm seeing tons in agentic commerce.
Agentic commerce?
We're calling it agentic commerce.
Ooh, that should be trademarked.
It's a category.
Okay.
Where I'm seeing a lot of opportunity there is actually in person too, is retail and in-person experiences, where let's take out the retail person that you have to ramp up every quarter and have a certain standardized agent that is sharing the brand, the culture, the messaging that the company wants to share. Mm-hmm. And what we're finding is that is a workforce that is very fluid. You have to onboard when there's demand increases, and you have to offboard. And so why not have an agent that will deliver? And ultimately, that type of person may actually have a better experience if it's done by an agent. And I think that's what's important, is to ultimately think about the consumer. What is an optimized experience? Is it an agent or is it a human, right? Or is it both, right? And so you ultimately want to do what is best for the company, which is usually what is best for their customer and their employee. And I mention that because I think that there's this sort of fear that with AI, it will, take out a lot of what an employee does, but I don't think so. It's going to really enable an employee to do what they do best. So does an employee want to memorize, the company song. No, an agent sharing the company song to the customer makes sense. The employee having that really human touch that is very custom by person is what a agent can't do well. And so that's what I'm interested in at agent commerce, is like the agent doing what the human can't do well, and the human really focusing on nothing that they don't want to do that is automated, replicable. That's what an agent should do.
Yeah.
And really focusing on the personal interaction. And you still need that personal interaction.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Like, we're seeing AI provide some of the promises of what a global workforce is providing, right? Which is buying back your employees' time to do what they're great at.
Exactly.
In a way that's way more cost effective, way more repeatable. But what I'm so fascinated with, we've seen this initial adoption of agentic behavior across a few use cases, but we're in the early innings right now of agents. We were just chatting about a paper on agents. So like, we see commerce, we see these kind of like single entry point use cases for agents. Like, what's on the horizon here for agentic behavior? What is going to be possible?
Yeah, I think even as Lisa hinted at it, I think we're only scratching the surface of letting employees be more productive and be better at what they're doing. You see, the LLM agents, they're very good at memorization tasks. There's a lot of data out there about things that have already been done, about customer conversations that have happened, about people asking questions on forums and seeing what resolution they get out of that. And a company itself, as you described, has their own documentation. And because we're talking about text and or voice, these agents are really good at assimilating all that information and remembering it way more clearly than a normal person would.
Yes.
So in interactions today, when you have with customer support, for example, when you ask them a question and you have a niche kind of a problem that customers don't often have, their next step is to, hey, let me get on a senior customer support executive who can help you with this. Or hey, let me transfer you to the technical team because this is not our domain, you land in the wrong place, and then you reset back to zero and you're again on the long hold.
Yes.
Sitting on that. I've done a lot, by the way.
It happens all the time.
Exactly. I hate that. So, but with these agents, they're not really as limited as you think in terms of memory. Like, we have models with billions of parameters. We have retrieval augmented generation, or RAG, where they can assimilate databases. We're already training models with terabytes of data. And do companies have terabytes of data for documentation? Absolutely not, right? So these models are definitely going to be great at assimilating all that information. You're going to have a single point of contact. And then what we've seen recently with 11 Labs, with GPT-4o for that matter, the realism of speaking to an agent, you can't tell if it's an agent or a human. Mm-hmm. And I think that's phenomenal as a customer. When I make this call, I want to talk to a person. As humans, we're social people. We want to speak to someone, explain what we're facing, and have that person go, I really understand, I sympathize with you, here's what we can do. I think that's another simple value add that these agents can bring that will transform the space.
Yeah, 1,000%. And also, to the point of enabling the human, is right now, to your point, when there's an issue that is sort of out of the normal recent memory of an agent, they escalate you to a manager. But with AI, the agentic commerce will be, taking out the human, but also amplifying the human. So the human having an agent to be able to answer questions that they don't have in their memory bank, but that the agent can share with the human because it's within the memory bank of the company's history. Right? And so I think that will enable a human actually to operate at the manager level versus just the agent level. And now the agent is automated, right, with a bot. 1,000%. Yeah.
You'd mentioned like Lemonade, which we can all say is incredibly tech forward, right? Amazing tech team. You work with startups all day, but what about these like tech-enabled being like a very nice description of a lot of these larger legacy enterprises? Like, they must be oftentimes hearing this, talking about it in the boardroom, but the idea of doing what Klarna did at a company like State Farm, right, for instance, which I know is pushing the edge here, but it's so large. Like, how do you, I know you were just on a panel with an executive from State Farm. How do you have that conversation with them about that large scale of digital transformation?
Yes. So I think that we can categorize the market between startups, the what I would call like tech native companies, and then AI native companies, and then the legacy enterprises. And what we've found is that, of course, tech and AI native companies are easiest to adopt. But the enterprises are the ones that really actually, with a small change, will move the needle in terms of productivity, right? And that's why I love industries like insurance and finance and oil and gas, that just a small change of the needle will really have such a big economic output. So what we're seeing is, to your point, when we brought on a State Farm and Allstate, those legacy companies are building innovation arms and are eager to work with startups. And so what I'm seeing is that those companies may have a pre-existing relationship with McKinsey. And so McKinsey now is sort of the middleman between startups, because they see that for them to continue to be relevant, they need to be the conduit between the innovative startups applying AI to enterprises. And so what I'm seeing is either there's an innovation team within the legacy enterprise, or that legacy enterprise is leveraging their relationship with Accenture, with McKinsey, with BCG, to connect them to their business process to AI. And so I think that's a good segue to what you guys do. But there's clear need, and their investors are getting a feeling of fear of missing out. Everybody sees NVIDIA, and so there's pressure on companies to implement it in a very sensical, logical, and thorough way. And I think that they're relying on the consulting companies to do that.
Have you?
And the question is, will they do that successfully?
Right.
Or will they just give you a PowerPoint and leave?
They're amazing at that. All of our classmates from Harvard are amazing at McKinsey. So actually, to that point, I see big opportunities in actually the Lemonade model. Applied to AI. So a net new native AI insurance company, a net new native AI financial advisory company, a net new native AI legal company, versus what we're seeing now are the low-hanging fruits, which are, now I wouldn't say Harvey of the world is a low-hanging fruit, but a AI B2B company selling into a legacy company. The next generation is going to be the Lemonade model of from start to finish, let's AIify the company. So we're in this middle zone. You know? So it's the classic, adoption versus distribution, right? Like if State Farm can adopt fast enough, that's ultimately bad news for the overall market size for Lemonade. But, how quickly can a company like that's pushing the needle at the board saying, I'm counting how many times you're using AI in the 10K, and that's how we're thinking about the value of the business. How quickly can they actually get something like a real AI solution into house? What are you seeing in the market? And we'll abstract away State Farm, but just that size of company.
I think it's really dependent on how this company is structured and the planning process. Of how quickly, we love the Amazon planning process here at Link and the P1 process, so that you can actually quickly start, new segments of, and I think that's actually how it would have to work, is creating a completely new segment in a company, and having that grow.
Skunk Works for AI, basically.
I mean, American Express ultimately, only the paranoid survivors, they say, right? So American Express was a completely different company 200 years ago. Right?
A courier company, right?
It was a courier company. Exactly. It was a courier company. It's ultimately a credit card company that's doing great with the Gen Zs, right? So they've had to innovate. And so I think that's really about the mentality of the company, and also how it's structured and its planning.
Interesting. And so you're bullish on AI native, build from 0 to 1. I think there's a lot of people that will disagree with you. A lot of people that are going to say, just drive all the capital into the public markets, and they're going to be the ultimate winners of this. Like, what do you say to the folks when you're sitting around having a glass of wine? They're like, all right, Lisa, I get it. Like, you work at a venture capital firm, you got to bet on the AI native, but like, they have such an advantage. Like, what do you say to your friend, your colleague, maybe your mom, as they don't really believe you?
Yeah, I think that they definitely do have an advantage in terms of the data that they're acquiring, and I think that's the strategy that OpenAI did so well. Was enabled everybody to use their tools, and so I do think that the way to go about it would be a sort of ecosystem-friendly approach, so that if you are a new native companies, you're actually, offering your data, not being a closed source system. And I think it's really about the process of how you're going to be sharing data, because that's what the large enterprise really has. At the end of the day, that's very valuable is the memory, right? Is the hundreds of years of data that they have. And so I actually think that if you're Allstate, let's not name names, but if you're a legacy insurance company, and if you want to start a new native AI company within your legacy company, actually like driving that open sourced, open-minded ethos would be best for your ecosystem, and you would also be leading the way.
Right.
And so I think it's doable. With the right strategy and the right planning process within enterprise.
You must get a call once a week from some an HBS executive who's much older than us that's asked the same question. It's like, hey, gonna have this conversation anonymously. I understand you know a lot about generative AI. We have a lot of data. We think that's good. Like, and that's where the conversation ends. And they're like, does it matter, right? Like, does it matter? And so, like, how do you answer that question for all? So you can stop getting hammered from random executives asking this question.
That's right. We get that question all the time. But I think there's a very important point. There's an elephant in the room here, which is you have a lot of data, but it's probably less valuable than you think it is. Because there's this difference between like having a lot of data and then making use of that data. And the hard challenge is you don't know what you're going to do with it when you're actually collecting it. And it's not highly probable that you will be able to post-process it or make actually sense of it in a way that is useful to your company going forward. Because you're changing as a company. All the legacy companies have changed, over the period of these many years. So if you're here today and you're thinking about, hey, how do I start adopting AI? How do I become an AI company? You're probably late to the game. And you should have been thinking about this 2 years ago. But that's hard, right? But which is where it makes sense to collaborate with the startups. It makes sense to collaborate with those who have been early enough to the game, who have figured things out, and who can help you get there. That is one place where I can see synergies between the large companies and the startups who have the expertise. Because if you were to start up, you were to hire someone, you were to build your, get your engine going, you were to make sense. And then maybe 6 months to a year down the line, you would actually start making sense of some of your data, and then it will probably be too late. But then that brings me to the other point about being AI native versus having an AI arm, right? And the reason why people like Lisa, and I'm with her on board with that idea actually, that AI native is going to be the winners going forward. And the reason for that is some of it has to do with cost, right? So if you look at how much it costs for, let's say, GPT-4 or the latest state-of-the-art Claude 3.5 Sonnet or whatever, to spit out a page of text, right? It's like less than pennies at the moment. We're talking like cents here, like fractional cents in some cases. If you scale that up, we recently looked at this paper called AI Agents That Matter, and it talked about how much it really costs to actually get something meaningful out of these models. They did, I believe, code. They use code as a reference, and it costs them about $4 to run something on the SWE bench, benchmark, the SWE bench repo, and that is actually a little bit concerning, right? Because if it costs you $4 to get something meaningful, and you're talking about enterprise-grade solutions, it's going to cost you thousands of dollars to get something that you can actually use and deploy. And that might worry some, but the point here is that the SWE bench by itself is only about 6 to 8 months old. We're just getting started. We don't really have the best benchmarks that can indicate how well models are doing. We're still working on that process. As we go forward, I don't think anyone is going to disagree on the idea that the cost of inferencing is going to go down. As of today, people use GPUs for training. We are seeing a lot of CPUs or specialized use cases of GPUs for inferences. But going forward, we're going to see more CPUs being used for inferencing. We're going to see more specialized hardware developed specifically for the inference use case because there's so much demand for it. And that naturally and organically is going to bring the cost down from maybe like $4 to maybe a few cents. And simultaneously, we will see progress on benchmarks, we'll see progress on frameworks, and we'll definitely, as we have seen, progress with the models themselves that get better and better at doing things based on prompts or based on whatever frameworks you're using. So with that idea in mind, I am bullish on AI native being more successful just because it can do a variety of tasks just as good, if not better than humans.
So Moore's law, cost is going to go to near zero for agentic behavior. The question is, you throw more data, you throw more compute, you throw more algorithms at them, like how far down the complexity work chain are these agentic workflows going to be able to get, right? Like I think we can see obviously when we lay out the blueprint for these things, like we're mapping an insurance workflow, it does a few of these tasks, it eliminates a huge amount of people. But I think people used to look at the Markov chain, I guess, like how deep down the Markov chain are we really going to get?
I think anything that's a pattern that's established, right? So if you think about coming back to what I mentioned earlier, the LLM, transformers architecture, the LLMs, what they're really doing is they're memorizing things. They're not learning new skills on the fly as you prompt them. LLMs can't do that. But what LLMs are great at is we've seen discovering patterns, especially patterns that they've seen before.
That we might not see.
That we might not see, right? And then applying those patterns to existing tasks. Now, if you come back to workflows in the insurance or the finance space, are they predictable? Are they well-defined? Yes, definitely. So the executives or the agents in those spaces, the human agents, they're not doing net new tasks for every single policy that they process, for every single loan that they underwrite. They're following a well-defined process that has been documented for years. And therefore, it is understandable that LLM agents will be able to go far enough down this line to see complete autonomy in some places. It would be far more productive to use humans as barriers and quality checkers, as checkpoints to that process, than to have humans do the repetitive menial work of doing something that they've done for so long.
1,000%. And their mind also will be fresh to identify those errors. And actually, that's an area that we're seeing tons of new startups in, is reliability testing of models, right? So that right now it is being done by humans. And the idea is to also have that automated with agents, identifying errors.
Very virtuous circle. All right, Lisa, you're going to be, in a matter of time here, I'm sure, asked to join a number of large public board companies. All right, I can see it in your future. They're going to want you on there to help advise them. What's the 2 or 3 sentences that you share on executing an AI strategy for a large insurance or finance company in the boardroom behind closed doors?
Yeah, well, I think it's a good question because it's being asked in every boardroom. And if we think about acquisition, underwriting, claims processing, customer service, sales, we're seeing AI across all those given segments. And so right now we're seeing, and actually right after this, healthcare.com just arrived, is actually thinking about how to apply AI to the entire funnel and prioritizing based on where the company is.
Yep.
Meaning if they're just building their brand, right? They're
Yeah.
really going to be focusing on acquisition. If they're a lead gen business, they're going to be focusing on acquisition. If they're a reinsurer or an MGA that does have a cut of the profits,
Yeah.
let's really focus on underwriting
Right.
and finding the highest LTV customer. So we were speaking with Prudential, like what they care about is really, really focusing on using AI to identify the highest value customers at the optimized CAC level.
Right.
And so it's really based on the business model of the company, of where they can provide the biggest lever to productivity.
Yeah.
And then it's really about resources and execution. So we did see companies hire a lot of, I would say, like theoretical PhDs that could not implement changes. And so instead of theoretically, really finding the resources to implement it into the given workflow. And so that could be, a lot of, people that have worked in industry, may have, strong academic credentials, but ultimately it's about finding people who are technical, but also doers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's so fascinating because the payback period for executing this correctly is like days to months, right? Like from execution. So it's almost about pulling in the right people and focusing on the right tasks,
Yes.
which is really what boards are great at. So it's a huge opportunity. Well, thanks for joining us,
Yes.
Lisa. I really appreciate the time, and looking forward to continuing the conversation off camera here.
Okay, awesome.